Okay. Good afternoon. Since we have started somewhat late, we will go immediately into any questions you might have. So, hands. Interesting, only ladies. Carrie? Yes.
Hello, Raj. It's good to be with you. And Gerald wants to say hello to you also. He couldn't be here today. It's been quite a month for me, and the pieces have fallen into place, and I'll be leaving next week. I'd like to ask you about my work situation. For quite some time, I've been feeling disengagement from the work I'm doing, and
The profession itself.
yeah, lack of joy and just not being as engaged, and I feel it when I'm there, and I don't like it. Is that a temporary situation for me, or is there something else I should be looking at in terms of what I should be doing?
It is completely temporary. The joy will return. The stress of feeling personally responsible for coping with all of the changes that are going on, all by yourself, is coloring everything and is wearing you out. You will find that once it is over and you're able to take a deep breath, what you call normal perspective will return. So don't jump to any conclusions and change careers abruptly here. It's not called for. I do want to home in on the fact that the stress comes, and this is true of everyone when you're experiencing stress, the stress comes from thinking you're alone and that you must handle everything yourself, that you must cope with it with your personal energy, and that's the only energy that is available to help you move through it. You all keep forgetting that there's a God. You all keep forgetting that you have a guide. You all keep forgetting that you are attended to, you might say, by servants, attended to by those who stand ready to serve you, to help you discover that everything you thought you had to cope with on your own is not what you thought it was, but is instead a movement of God that has no stress to it. They stand ready to help you look at it through a better perspective, so that you can see that the movement is occurring because God has set it into motion, and therefore God is at all points responsible for the rest of the movement, and therefore your only job is to cooperate with the movement, which is much easier than trying to cause the movement to be the way you perceive it must be, if, in fact, it's all up to you. You say, well, the demand is so much in my face, that I have to respond immediately, and I don't have time to stop long enough to consider that there might be help available to me, and even guidance that can show me that what I think I have to do doesn't need to be done. You see? Inevitably, if you are going to look at things all by yourself without assistance, then because you have moved into an unnatural place, an unjoined place, and that is not natural, everything you see is going to be conflicted or potentially conflicted, and because you have chosen to be independent while you're looking at the movement of God, and you're seeing the movement of God as potentially conflicted, you will assume that it's up to you to iron out all the wrinkles and to cope with the conflict. You can't help seeing the movement of God as anything other than conflicted, polarized, oppositional, troublesome, if you're choosing to look at it from an unjoined place, all by yourself. It's not because the conflict is inherent in what you're seeing, it's inherent in the way you're looking at it. So, the sensible thing is not to attempt to cope with the conflict, but to do what's necessary to change the glasses you're looking through. And you change the glasses you're looking through by refusing to handle it on your own and taking 5 minutes or 10 minutes or perhaps a whole hour to stop in your tracks and say, wait a minute, I realize that if the conflict I'm seeing is because of the way I'm looking at it, then I am going to stop looking at it by myself and invite help. And I'm going to listen for the help. And I'm going to become still. Practically speaking, not lofty spiritual talk, the fact is that if you take a soak in a tub, or if you sit down and you meditate and you relax, your blood pressure drops, your heart rate evens out, your breathing slows down, your body comes into a state of relaxation. When you relax, it means that one way or another you manage to stop thinking so much for a little bit. And when you stop thinking and equilibrium comes to your body, that gives you a significant, very practical hint. It tells you that stress is the result of how you're thinking. And even more, it tells you that it's because you are thinking. Further, when you are stressed, pay attention to your body. Again, very practical, unlofty consideration here. Pay attention to your body. You feel discomfort in the area of the solar plexus. Your muscles are tense. And the way the ego works, it says, my body is telling me that there is a problem. My body is telling me that I need to be upset, you see. My body tells me that I need to be guarded that I need to be on guard, defensive. You use the sensations in your body to further confirm the need for you to be mentally distressed. When your body is giving you those signals because you first allowed yourself to become mentally distressed by choosing to cope with these things as though all there was to you is that body sitting there in that chair. And that you have no connection whatsoever with anything else other than what you're aware of. There is no God, there is no guide, there is no Holy Spirit. There is no answer available outside of what you can manufacture in your own mind through whatever skill you have. And if you don't have a lot of skill, you won't come up with an answer which makes you freak out even more, and your body gives you more feedback that it's necessary to be even more afraid. You see what I'm saying?
I'm
Pay
feeling
attention
less and
to
less
the obvious.
skillful.
I'm sorry?
I'm feeling like I'm less and less skillful, like I'm losing my skills. And that's not good.
This is good news. Because it's leading you to the point of giving up trying to have it personally all by yourself. Oh, you don't know the blessing it is for you to be coming to a place where the idea that you need help is really meaningful to you. Because until you know that you need help, you are going to persist in doing it all by yourself. And as long as you persist in being alone, in coping with existence, as I said, everything you observe is going to have conflict associated with it. Why? Because you have dissociated yourself, separated yourself from your source, God. From whom your intelligence comes, from whom your capacity to flow with His movement of fulfillment comes. Now, you don't have to arrive at a point of deeply, deeply, deeply feeling that you don't have any skills left before saying, Uncle. And that's why I'm talking to you here, because you can do it by choice before things are really rugged. You can do it when there's no apparent problem at all, because well, the best way I can put it is you are able to start moving forward into your sanity, into your whole-mindedness, without having to climb a mountain first, just to get over the depression of discovering that you lack the skill it takes to cope. Do you see what I'm saying? While all of you still think you are able to cope and you're not highly distressed, you can start right there by saying, help. My day that is ahead of me, that isn't frightening me, I would like your help with. How can I be utterly in the movement of this day of your unfoldment, God, and be in perfect harmony with it? Show me how to fit in so that none of the glory of it escapes my attention, and so that I experience more of what you're unfolding than my best imaginations might be. You see? I keep saying it. The only thing confronting you is the only thing that's going on, and that's the kingdom of heaven. That is reality with a capital R. It is God moving, God being. It's the only thing confronting you. If you let that sink in, it's easier to be curious, to see God in everything. But if you think everything you're seeing is what you've decided it is, and God doesn't have anything to do with it, you're not going to bring curiosity. You bring with your definite sense of what it all is a wish to see what you believe it is. And it disallows for it to be anything more than what you have decided it is. You see? And so then you feel stuck, which you are, because you keep playing the same definitions over and over and over again, and you keep by virtue of your wish to see what you believe everything is, you send messengers out to bring back news to you confirming what you're wishing to see or what you have decided everything is. And the messengers you send out are obedient to you. So you have to send out new messengers. You have to send out messengers that arise from an impulse in you that says, I want to see more of what God is being in my day, in my face. So that the messengers will go out and gather that and bring it back and reveal it to you. You see? But you've got to stop getting off of the wheel and the habit, and be willing to look afresh. So, you know what, everybody, you've got to stop. You've got to stop this wonderful head trip that says, I know God is all and everything is going to be all right. And then continue on in your own little habit. If you're going to acknowledge intellectually that God is all and everything is going to be all right, then take the next step, which is the real step. Voice in your mind the desire to see more of God, and then pay attention for more of God to register with you. And that requires some self-discipline, because you've got to set aside whatever confirmation of safety you have been getting from valuing, fretting, being frustrated, worrying, being on the alert for what bad thing is going to happen. You see? You have to set that down. And that's a practice, that's a work, that's an effort. But you've got to remember that your habit of worrying is work as well. And that work depletes you because it uses your physical energy to create the sensations of fear that you use to confirm that fear is legitimate and defense is called for and more tension is justified. you've got to break the continuity of that habit. So do take a soak in a tub, or do sit down and breathe deeply and slowly and consciously for 5 or 10 minutes. Do something to break the pattern. Put your spiritual truths into practice. Ask for help. Reach out to God. Reach out to the Holy Spirit. Reach out to your guide. And then shut up and listen. That's the practice. Shut up is the practice. And listen. Because the service that your servants await you to let them provide will be forthcoming, because that's the function of your servants. It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. That's His service to you. Because if He doesn't extend all that He is to you, His purpose is not fulfilled, and He is not fully expressed right there where you are. And so if there is a God, God is your servant, not to give you what you want, but to give you all that He is, so that all that He is fully embodied right there where you are. And all of the brotherhood that is awake stands in God's service to provide the service God is extending to you by helping you recognize it, instead of your continuing to be distracted by poor choices of places to give your attention. You see? It is a blessing for you to lose confidence in your private, personal sense of capacity to cope with being. Being, existing, is not meant to cope with, it's meant to be experienced. Flowed with, allowed, enjoyed. If you are floating in a river, we'll say it's a gentle enough river that you can float on your back easily. The experience is pleasant. But if you decide that instead of flowing with the current, you're going to turn around in the opposite direction and swim upstream, then the river becomes something to cope with. You see? And being in the river is a coping situation. And it's also depleting in terms of your energy. Whereas if you're floating on your back, your energy can be regenerated because you're relaxed. Life is not meant to flow against and then figure out how to deal with the difficulty of going upstream. So what does that mean? When you are flowing with the current, you are saying yes to the way things work. It's like saying yes to God. You are joined with the purpose of the movement of the river. You are not expressing an independent will. You are yielding to the movement. And I promise you that when you yield to the movement of God, the scenery that is going to come to view is going to be phenomenal. But if you turn around and try to head upstream, you're not going to have a chance to see the scenery because you're going to be busy trying to survive from the loss of energy that you're going to experience because of the effort it takes to go against the current. And all of a sudden, something that is meant to be an experience of total fulfillment becomes an experience of survival until you're willing to say, hey, I'm worth the time it takes for me to turn over on my back and stop trying to cope for a moment and relax, to be still. And this is a wonderful example because the moment you do that, whether all of your energy has returned or not, whether you have decided to permanently give up going against the current, you do immediately find yourself in the movement of the river. Having yielded, physically you might say, even if you are lying there calculating how you are going to return to the struggle of swimming upstream as soon as you're rested. You see what I'm saying? It's inevitable for you to be in the movement of creation, in the movement of God. Because whether you're struggling to resist it or not, you are in it. Whether you're struggling against the current or not, you're in the current. You see? And either the current is your blessing because you're yielding to it, or it's your curse because you're swimming against it. But all the time you're in the current. All the time you're confronted with the movement. Just like all the time, the only thing you're confronted with is the kingdom of heaven. Be willing to break the pattern and yield to those who stand, excuse me, who stand ready to serve you in revealing to you how you can gracefully abandon the ethic of being the best damned swimmer against the current. You see, this past month was meant to be enjoyable because it is a movement of fulfillment. And what made it less than enjoyable was that you thought that to move through it gracefully was entirely up to you and you alone, coping with others who also think they are having to do everything by themselves and themselves alone. You see? Not because the movement itself is difficult or was difficult. It's a simple and big secret. It's a simple secret, not full of complexity. It doesn't take skill to float on your back. It doesn't take effort to float on your back. A leaf effortlessly floats downstream. It doesn't even have any arms or muscles with which to accomplish anything. And there it goes, right down the stream. You see, you all pride yourself on the fact that you think you stand head and shoulders above everything else because you have more capacity than a leaf. And that's what hooks you. You don't need more capacity than a leaf has. You don't need more capacity than a leaf has. And do you see how silly it is to try and top someone else's capacity? And that's what you spend most of your lives doing. Being equal to or being better than someone else's capacity to swim upstream, to not be in the flow, and prove how good you are at not being in the flow. And how? How do you get in the flow? By saying help. By abandoning the belief that you are an independent mind, an independent, self-sufficient entity, and saying, I know there's something bigger than me. I know I didn't create myself. And whatever it is that's responsible for my existence, I would like to connect with it. I would like it to show me how to be in harmony with it. Help. Whatever it is that's bigger than me and that is the reason for my existing, help me. I don't want to be unconscious of you any longer. I'm going to stop the struggle. Help. And then shut up so you can hear the response. It's like, stop swimming so that you can feel the current. And so that you can feel the way it embraces you and holds you and moves you And so that your mind is free to pay attention to where the movement is taking you. If you're swimming upstream, the current is your enemy. If you relax, the current becomes your ally. It becomes your servant. It doesn't serve you to give you what you want, but it serves you by getting you where it's taking you. Insulting to the ego. But hey, do you want to go where the ego has suggested it can get you, but can't? Or do you want to yield to the movement of God that can get you to the place where God is all that you're seeing and experiencing as the center and circumference of you and all that is, in which bliss is your experience? You've got to decide which is more important to you, and I promise you, you will do what is most important to you. And so if you continue to have a struggle, you may know that at the moment that is what is most important to you. It's most important to you to swim upstream or at an angle to some degree against the current. But at least you know what the answer is. The answer is give up the struggle. Turn over on your back and float. Yield to the current. Discover that you weren't meant to have any more authority over the situation than the leaf. I'm looking at you almost constantly, but I'm talking to all of you. You weren't meant to have any more authority than the leaf. What is your function then? Your function is to pay attention to the trip. The valleys, the scenery, everything that the movement of the current brings into your experience. And what is it going to bring into your experience? The kingdom, because it's the current's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Got it? Now, you'll probably lose it in 20 minutes. But at least you know now that you had something that you lost. If you don't know that you've lost something, then you're stuck. And you were stuck for the last month because you forgot something for a month or longer, but you forgot it for a while. So, sign up on a slip over there, order the set of tapes from today, send a contribution. No, I'm joking about that. But get those tapes so that you have it to listen to remind you of the simplicity of this. And if you keep forgetting it, so what? Keep reminding yourself, because that's how you break the habit. And don't judge yourself because you forget it. Just Keep remembering. Remember as many times as you forget, and there will finally be a time that you remember and never forget. But do the work. Take the effort to break the spontaneous habit of concern, worry, fretting, and trying to figure out how to do everything all by yourself. And break the habit over and over and over. Interrupt the habit. That's what I mean. Interrupt the habit over and over and over. This is what it's about. It's not about all the spiritual talk. And have I described anything difficult? Anything complex? No. How difficult is it to stop thinking? I know that it seems very difficult. But thinking is not the equivalent of being conscious. And thinking is not inseparable from being conscious. How hard is it to stop worrying? Well, you can say it's very hard to stop worrying, but you do know that you can stop worrying. You do have ways to stop worrying. Well, what does it mean when you stop worrying? It means you stop thinking about the worrying thoughts and you give your attention somewhere else. And what that means is you usually start thinking about something else. You think about working in the garden, or you think about cooking dinner, or you think about caring, giving attention, loving attention to somebody else. It's still thinking, but there's a way to stop worrying. And I'm telling you, there's a way to stop thinking. And you manage to do that very often when you take a hot soak in a tub. Because what happens is that the physical sensation of extreme warmth feels so good that your attention slips to the good feeling. And you say, oh, to hell with it, I'll worry after the bath, after the soak, right? And so you make a decision to not think so much and just absorb the pleasure of the warmth and the pleasure of relaxing and the evenness of the breath that comes and the lowering of your blood pressure that happens and the smoothing out of your breathing. You begin to enjoy that more than the worrying. So what we're talking about isn't complicated. Roll over on your back and float. Cease expending energy and effort. Just stop it. And then, because that's not the end of it, but this part's easy too, then desire to know how to be in the movement, how to fit into the movement, so that the things that are frustrating cease to be experienced as frustrating, so that the problems you were fretting about are resolved. But you see, now you're asking for help in knowing how to be. You're asking for help in knowing how to be congruent with the movement of God. And you're not trying to find out how to swim upstream better.
Or to get in a different stream.
Exactly, or get into a different stream, yes, yes.
That's what I was thinking about, getting into a different stream, because I didn't like this one.
Exactly, exactly. And it isn't that you're in this stream, it's that you're going against the current. Yes. We're going to take a break so that this can just sit before you have some wonderful new thing to replace it with.
Thank you, Raj.
You're welcome. Okay. Hands. The gentleman right here.
Thank you, Raj. As I was sitting outside during this break, I experienced myself on my back in the sunshine, possibly floating, and in a river. And I was curious to look around to see the kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven. On one side of the river, I saw what appeared to be war and the preparation for war. I looked on the other side of the river and heard what I thought was the rumors of war and mongering about war. And I'm curious as to what I was not seeing, or why those experiences were felt impenetrable as I was looking for the kingdom of God.
Okay. Were you looking at the view alone?
Yes.
So, the yielding to the river symbolizes yielding to the Father's perspective, which means that you want to look at everything joined with the better perspective, you might say, so that you might have the opportunity to see the truth of what is going on, and so that as long as the truth of what is going on doesn't seem to be manifested in the world, you might know how to behave relative to the world in a manner that promotes the manifestation of what is true. The problem you all have is that you look at everything all by yourselves. And when you do that, you can only interpret everything based upon your prior experience. So you are looking at everything through the lens of the past. And it's as though it's as though you go into your computer to find something you haven't put there yet. All you're going to come up with is what you already put there. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, as long as you are looking alone, you're always looking at the past. Even though you're looking at the now, because you're in the now, you're looking at it through the past, if you're looking by yourself. Is that clear?
Yes.
If you want to see something new, don't go into your C directory. you're going to have to go somewhere else so that you can then have something new to put in your C directory. Just a moment. Paul is afraid he won't be able to convey this well, and so he's yielding further. The problem is that he can't grasp a sense of where I'm going. We've been talking about how when you're looking at things alone, you're always seeing the past, meaning your mind's eye of the past. You all rely upon memory for your comfort or for whatever sense of peace you have. You say, if you're asked, how are you feeling? Pretty good. I'm not miserable today. I'm rather happy right now. Things are very pleasant. I love to listen to Raj, and that's what's happening, and I love to be with people who won't make fun of me because I love listening to Raj, and the food is good, and so on. But let me ask you this. No, I'm not going to ask you something. I'm going to point out something. Part of what makes you feel good today is that you live in the United States. Part of what makes you feel good today is that you live in the town you live in. Part of what makes someone listening on the internet feel good is because they live in Holland. And part of what makes another person on the internet today feel good is the fact that they live in Dublin, Ireland. But you don't say, well, I feel good because I live in the United States. But let me ask you this. Now I'm going to ask the question. If your spouse or partner came to you and said, I want to move to Hoboken, New Jersey. And you really didn't think that was such a hot idea. Or I want to move to Fiji. And the idea of the tropics sets well with you, but living on an island permanently doesn't. You would begin to realize that part of what makes you feel comfortable is where you do live. And part of what makes you feel comfortable about the fact that you live where you live is that you are familiar with where you live. So part of your comfort right now has to do with things you would never think about. And all of these things are memory. All of these things are in your mental computer banks. And although you don't think about them, they contribute to your sense of well-being at this moment. If any one of those things were to be changed drastically, you would find that you weren't as happy and that you weren't in as much peace. Now, what's the point of this? The point of this is that you don't realize how governed you are by your memory. You don't realize how much of your present and your experience of the present is governed by the past, because you're using the past as part of what makes you feel stable. Your familiarity with the community you live in is a memory that you have acquired. But change any one of the factors and your peace is disturbed. And adjustment has to occur, right? And so you are comfortable because you're living in the past. That's my point. Does everyone grasp that? Paul is concerned that it's complex. You are comfortable because you're living in the past. You are allowing yourself to be comfortable because your memory says it's safe to feel comfortable. Now, if you're comfortable because you're living in the past, well, you know, how sane is that? When you have the grandmother or the great-grandmother of the family who spends all of her days talking about what happened in 1962, or when they went on this trip in 1943, and all they're doing is rehearsing the past. What is your thought? Well, her mind is going. And yet you feel pretty good about yourselves living in the past. But it's just as insane, because that's not real security. It's not the security that comes from knowing how to be gracefully in the now, on now's terms. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm wondering whether it's to be living in the past, to look out one side and the other, and to see what I perceive to be
wars and rumors of wars.
Wars and rumors of wars.
Of course it is. Because someone else can look out and say, I see the gathering energies of change that are impelled by the demand of reality to cause a shift of perception in the world amongst mankind that will cause a shift of perception to occur, that will move everyone forward in their awakening process much more radically than anything that has ever happened before. And no matter how egos are interpreting it, it is something to be embraced with joy and expectation and continued curiosity to see something that simply is not available anywhere in my memory to conceptualize about. You see?
Yes.
Otherwise, you're stuck with determining what you're seeing based upon the only information you have, which is from the past. Current past information, you might say. Currently accessed past information.
I may have thought I was floating on the river, but I was accessing the memory bank as I looked out rather than clear vision.
Because you were looking by yourself. And you want to look with someone whose perspective is not gathered from your memory.
Yes.
Which means from your personal past with all of the idiosyncratic misperceptions that you created because you used the past to create new current misperceptions all along the way. And so, like the Bible that has gotten altered multiple times, you have altered your memory banks multiple times so that you appear to be a new you with new beliefs, but it's just been rearranging ignorance so that it looks new to you.
That makes good sense. I can relate to that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, to be told the truth straight out like that could make you feel like shit.
It doesn't.
I know, but there are times when it will, I promise you. But when I share it with you, it's not with judgment. And when you contemplate it, it should be without judgment. What good does it do to not know that you're making a mistake? And to be told that a mistake is being made and that it has been made ignorantly, and to be provided with an alternative means that you now have a means of doing things in a new way. And so the point is to say, wow, I see that I've really been being foolish. That's just a bit of information, not a judgment. I've been doing something that hasn't worked. I've been doing something that couldn't work. I've been doing something that couldn't do anything other than keep me ignorant. So now that I see that, I have energy for doing something different. You see? My energy doesn't have to be caught up in judgment. My energy is no longer available for doing something useless, and you know, I am feeling a vigorous feeling within me for going in a new direction, exploring something that I've never explored before. In other words, there is an emerging energetic willingness to do things in a new way.
Connected.
Yes, and that's the point. That's the point of telling it to you straight.
It's a blessing.
If you could have done better, you would have done better, John. And everyone else. So what if you didn't do better? You couldn't do better. And, as I said the other night, there is no penalty for not doing something it was impossible for you to do. And if it was impossible for you to do better last week than you did, then there is no penalty associated with the results of the ignorance you expressed. Because you cannot do the impossible. But now that you know that there is a new possible, you have an alternative, and you can get on to exploring the new possibility. And the ego can say, wow, I see this. I was really stupid not to see it a week ago. And you can begin to fill up your present moment with grousing about how stupid you were a week ago. You see? And I'm trying to point out to you that you all employ the past constantly and in very complex ways, and you demean yourself constantly through its use. There is no way for you to use the past to get out of the habit of using the past. But just be aware of how you're always dealing with the past, and there is nothing else to deal with if you are insisting upon functioning as an independent, self-existent, authoritative entity who never inquires beyond his own memory banks, and that's all you've got. You may think you think originally, but you can't use a word that isn't in your memory bank, can you? If you haven't learned the word and deposited it in your memory bank, you can't use that word. You can't conceptualize anything that isn't already in your memory bank. But you can take disparate things in your memory bank and join them together and say, voila, something radically new, and it's still the past. Because if you're doing it alone, it's the past, it's memory. You've got to go outside the memory banks to gather new data. And you gather new data by saying, help, by asking a question. What's the truth about this? Now, I've given you new things to have in your memory banks. I've told you that there is a God. I've told you that God is responsive. I've told you that if you ask a question, you have servants awaiting you whose function it is to provide you with the new information. So now that's a memory, but the memory points you in the direction of not accessing the memory banks. You see? And it tells you that when you move in a direction other than the memory banks, there is a source of information that it's your birthright to be experiencing constantly. The only thing is, it's not the purpose for you to have that information so you can put it in your memory banks and continue to work out of the past. Ultimately, the point is to stay constantly, well, let's put it this way. You've been used to working, if you have a computer, you've been used to working on your little separate isolated computer on your desktop. But there are ways for your isolated computer on the desktop to connect to what's called a mainframe computer. Let's say like at the bank, where all of the information about all of the depositors could now become available to you, you see. So you've got to step outside the boundaries of your memory. And you've got to connect with the mainframe. Not so you can transfer data to your puny little PC, puny consciousness, but so that you can stay connected to the mainframe, so that all of the new information that embodies every aspect of the movement of creation can constantly become available to you, not to remember, but to have the experience of ongoingly. And that is where your safety will come in. Not because of what's been stored in your memory, not because of what you're familiar with, but because in having all knowledge, in having the universal conscious experience of being available to you, you're no longer looking at everything alone, and therefore it is impossible for the experience to have any conflict in it for you. And that's why there's bliss. And that's why there's safety. Because you have abandoned being alone. It's like the PC joined with the mainframe, no longer suffering from the sense of its 80 megabyte capacity to remember. You see? It feels its bigness, and whatever its capacity is to remember, is irrelevant because somebody else is remembering it. The mainframe is remembering it, or God is being conscious of it, and all that God is being conscious of is available to you as your conscious experience of being, because it's the nature of being. It is the function of God to give you the kingdom, to withhold nothing of what He is from you as your conscious experience of being.
Does the experience of war and lack of food, severe hunger, reside in the mainframe?
Absolutely not. It resides in the limited memory of the PC, puny consciousness. It lies in basing all of its conclusions on incomplete data, on data not gathered from the mainframe, on data that has been arranged and rearranged and rearranged and rearranged so that it constantly looks like there's new stuff in the memory. And the puny consciousness feels that it's alive because of rearrangement of past bits of information. And then, relating to another PC, you might say, which is also living its existence through constant rearrangement of previously stored data, who then relate to each other from this from these, I'm going to say, independent states of unconsciousness. If there's no new data, if there's nothing fresh happening, then there is not really consciousness. consciousness is consciousness when it is filled with living information. And living information can only be gathered from the these are not good words, but you will get the idea. From the point at which creation happens, where life emerges, you might say. When you are gathering information, when you are gathering the awareness of things from that point where life itself is emerging into expression, you are conscious. If that experience, that life data is stored, and you decide to give your attention to the storage area, you become unconscious. That's easy to see. And so when you have two PCs, Iraq, the United States, let us say, operating on the basis of unconscious arrangements and rearrangements of data, not in touch with the real movement that's going on, they will behave toward each other ignorantly and in ways that don't affirm life, that don't affirm consciousness. It will only affirm ongoing unconsciousness. And new data will be stored based upon the ignorant interactions. And the situation apparently becomes worse. But let me ask you this. When your favorite grandmother is living in the past, you're aware that the present and life in its fresh ongoingness, even humanly speaking, hasn't stopped, and that she's preoccupied with something that isn't real now. Likewise, the apparent conflict and the moves and counter moves that are based upon memory rather than connectedness with the vital emergence of life itself. It doesn't change the fact that life itself is what is emerging in its perfection, in its divinity. It doesn't change the fact that a real event is occurring that's being misinterpreted by everyone involved. So if you remember that, you can be curious to bring your attention to that point where life itself is emerging and new information is coming forth to register with you, not for storage, but for experience, so that you may be conscious, and in being conscious, behave in a way different from those who are insisting upon relating unconsciously. And your doing that is like the leaven that leavens the whole lump. It's the leaven that leavens the whole loaf. Without your having to become responsible, you become part of the light that decreases the darkness. Now, I brought this up so that you might understand more clearly that unless you are joined with one who is awake, you're living in the past only, and you are as senile as your wonderful elderly grandmother. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
But you have a choice not to be senile.
And not to see war.
That's right. But that doesn't mean that you say, oh, there's no war going on and I don't need to worry. Something is going on that needs to be seen for what it is. So open yourself up to the adventure of discovering what it really is, so that you stand consciously in support of it by having yielded to it and by being willing to flow with it and be in harmony with it in every gesture, every word, every look, every physical stance you take as you go through your day. You see?
Yes. Thank you.
It is the kingdom of heaven that's confronting you, even though it's looking like war and rumors of wars. And you just need to remember that you have a choice to look for what it really is, instead of what your hard drive is telling you and what President Bush's hard drive is telling him and what Saddam Hussein's hard drive is telling him and what the culture of each country is telling everybody else, and so on and so forth, which is all history. It's time to get off the wheel of history. It's time to get off the past, so that the moment you're living in can be lived on the basis of what it really is, instead of the best interpretation you can make with the memory you have available to you. That's it.
Thank you.
You are welcome. You may have the mic.
Did I miss it? Okay. Actually, Raj, I have a couple questions, not related to each other. The first one has to do with the healing modality that you became familiar with last Thursday. Is there anything that you can suggest to me that I might focus on or be aware of that will allow me to share this with as many people as I can, or who will benefit from it?
Not a thing.
Really?
You're already in the movement.
Okay. That was...
Don't mess it up by trying to do anything to it. Just
Okay.
allow it to continue.
Okay. Thank you. The other one has to do with a relationship with a dear friend of mine who I've known for 20 years, and we have recently become intimate with one another. And I wondered if you have anything that you would like to say about that relationship. No?
Enjoy it. Allow it. And above all, don't make the mistake of thinking that years of experience in a relationship have prepared you to easily be in relationship with someone new. You've never had this experience before. You're starting from scratch, literally, which means that there's a lot to enjoy the discovery of. In other words, discovery is the nature of the relationship. And you cannot assume that you learned a lot about relating to people in your prior relationship that will save you time in this relationship because it's brand new. And you've got, well, your past experience is not going to relieve you. I'm going to say the best parts of your past experience are not going to relieve you of having to be exquisitely and specifically attentive to every little detail of this new relationship. If the two of you bring your memory, if you bring your past into this relationship, and I'm saying that if the two of you, in the best interests of your relationship, brought the best parts of what you learned about relating in earlier relationships to this new relationship, you will, your attentiveness will be dulled.
Mm.
You won't bother to pay attention as well, because you say, I got that under my belt already. Let me tell you, you have nothing under your belt with this person. And none of you have anything under your belt about life. If it's under your belt, it's in your hard drive. Drive. Yes.
I think I understand what you're saying.
I'm just saying, be like you were 18 years old with your first relationship, where you had no illusions about having anything about relationships under your belt, and you were open to the delight of what a relationship with one other person might mean, and you held the best possible potentials in your mind as the likelihood, and then you paid attention to each other. You didn't have any preconceptions for yourself. You may have preconceptions based on the way your parents were, but man, this was your relationship, and you didn't think it had to be anything like your parents. But you also had no idea what it would be like, and so you looked with innocent eyes and expectation and delight and a wonderful experience of love that wasn't clouded over by experience. The past, memory banks, you see. So walk into this with innocent eyes, innocent of the past. So that your best experiences in this relationship might be significantly greater than the best experiences you had in the past one. Because you didn't have lowered expectations based upon the past. You see?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now all the rest of you who are in relationship, when you get up in the morning and look across the bed at your partner, or when you get up in the morning and meet with your significant other. Don't assume you've got that relationship under your belt either. No matter how positive you are that you got him or her pegged, just by virtue of the fact that he or she didn't snore the night before, to the degree that you think you've got them pegged, you're looking at them alone. The only thing you could peg them with was memory, is the past. And again, anytime you look at anything alone, it's going to necessarily be conflicted or be ripe for conflict. Because there's no way to experience reality in an unconflicted way if you are not joined with the Father, and therefore the brotherhood, in consciously being at the point of emergence of creation itself, of life itself. I'm going to put it this way. When you chose to disengage from God and say, I'd rather see it my way, you immediately were in a state of self-denial because you were denying your source. You say, I'd rather see it myself. And that's where conflict, opposition seemed to come into play. And as long as you maintain that opposing stance, my way as opposed to God's way, as long as you maintain that opposing stance, everything you experience about reality will be oppositional. Does that make sense to everyone? It's still the kingdom of heaven, and it's still unconflicted. But that's the way you're going to be experiencing it. So, you could wake up every day curious to experience what this incredible creature is that you're with. And neither you nor she will ever become what you were yesterday. So you've got to look at yourselves and each other with fresh eyes every day if you want to be conscious. Isn't this good news? It's also going to take diligence in not forgetting what I've told you, so that your curiosity can be refreshed over and over and over again. And you're worth the effort. And we, those of us who are awake, who stand with you to serve you, will never tire of reminding you as many times as it takes for you finally not to ever forget again. If you're worth it to us, you are worth it to you. So go ahead and make the effort. And if you forget, we'll remind you. And if you forget again, we'll remind you. And if you forget, don't kick yourself around the block. Just remember and get back on track. Over and over and over again. And I promise you, it becomes easier. Just remember that you have servants. You cannot do this alone because you don't exist alone. So let us love you. By remembering that we're here and it's not all up to you. We will take a break. Okay. You have a yes, but?
I have a yes, but about body. Yes, when you were talking about relaxing and tightening up, when I came here last month, I was not feeling well and I was unsettled, and I spent the whole month being unsettled and not feeling well. And I did everything I could to try and relax and let it go, and I asked for help, everything you talked about. Obviously, I wasn't letting it in because I continued to feel really sick, and I had a couple of really bad spells. So I'd like to ask two things. One, am I sick? I mean, am I physically ill, which could explain that? Or is it that I finally sort of figured out that what I was holding was 1,000 years worth of tears that I couldn't let out, and it feels like little whirling cells, and it really is painful. Last night I was really ill, and I just laid there and have tried to relax and give it up, ask to see what's real, what's true. And fortunately, when you did the Course in Miracles on Thursday night, I began to get a bit of an answer, and that's where the feeling of it being grief, and that I was holding, and that I couldn't release it or cry it or let it out. I guess I'm afraid to cry because I don't think I'll ever stop. But then also
Don't let that stop you.
The only time I can cry is when I'm driving, and this is not a good time to cry. But what I felt was maybe that grief was just love being held back. And that is probably one of the most painful things. Can you please tell me what's going on?
That is the most painful thing. It is what everyone is suffering from, because it is your function to be the presence of love, and to hold it back is a matter of, therefore, self-denial. And that hurts. Now, don't get hung up on 1,000 years of crying that's been held back. You know what I want you to do? I want you to forget about the crying. What I want you to give your attention to, firstly and intellectually, is that you are loved. And then secondly, I want you to dare to let it in. I want you to dare to let yourself feel it. You are loved. Constantly infinitely, perfectly, wonderfully by the Father, by me, and by all of the brotherhood who are awake. Every moment. There is never a moment that you are outside of our awareness. There is never a moment when we are unconscious of you and of loving you.
My experience of being loved has always come to me when I'm loving. That's when I feel the bigness of it. I don't know how you can say to me, let it in, because I don't know what that is.
In your mind, just say, help me feel it.
I didn't say help me feel being loved. I didn't. I said help me. I said help me see. And what I would like to have asked today, or what I'd like to ask, is the experience. And I guess what I wanted was the experience of love, of being loved. I want to see the light streaming off the trees like Judy did. I want to see when Paul was in the welfare office. I want to see those things. I mean, I feel them. I feel them when I'm with people, but I want to see them because I want to know it's real.
I understand. I'm loving you.
Thank you. Am I letting it in?
Gingerly.
It's true.
You see, the problem is that you are convinced that you're unlovable. And it just ain't so. And in this regard, I know better than you do. None of the rest of you are excluded from the love I'm extending. You are not who you think you are. And you can thank God for that. And who you think you are, you can thank yourself for. And who you think you are doesn't change what you are, truly. And no matter how one can look at you, you are lovable. And you are being loved. It is not necessary to go through a big cry in order to release the grief. You can just shift your attention to, first intellectually, the fact that you are loved and lovable, and then secondly, to be curious, interested in, desirous of having the experience. But let the desire be subtle. Don't bring intensity to the desire. Don't think that the stronger the desire, the more quickly it will come. Treat it like homeopathy, where the less there is of the essential element, the more powerful it is. Let your desire be whispered. Let it barely make a ripple in the universe. And just persist at this.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Hands. Right here.
Thank you, Raj.
You are welcome.
I'm afraid I probably am going to let go forever. For quite some time, I've been feeling an overwhelming feeling of anxiety and fear. And I just need to know how I release this. I've also been feeling an oversensitivity to everything that's going on around me. And can let out a good cry about 4 days out of 7. And I just need to know what I need to do in my life to move through this, because I have so much love underneath it, and I know it's not who I really am. So I just need to know what I need to do next to get over this.
First of all, I want you to be very patient with yourself. Fear, anxiety, excuse me, is never reasonable. And that is why it is hard to reason it away. And so when it can't be reasoned away, be patient with yourself. Don't get mad at yourself because you're not able to get rid of it. It will pass. I want you to regularly, at least every night, to ask for help in its release. You are what we will call a sensitive person. And a great deal of what you are experiencing is a general worldwide anxiety. What I want you to understand is that just because, let us say, 72% of the world is in a constant state of anxiety, does not mean that you have to be. I want that point to stand out in your mind. You're not a chameleon, and you do not have to reflect the background. So if the background is fearful, you do not have to change to fearful. The first thing to understand is that if the majority of the world is uneasy these days, and if a great number of Americans are more than uneasy, and if another portion of Americans are angry and retaliatory and feeling strong negative emotions, you can let them. You don't have to react to them. You don't have to become emotional about everyone else's emotionalism.
Mm-hmm.
Let them be emotional. Give them permission. But just be clear within yourself that you don't care to join them. And be clear that you don't have to. You're not required to bring any energy into that arena. And again, remember to ask for help in releasing it, in not storing it, not accumulating it. Just a moment. It's also important for you to know that just because you may be able to be aware of a need or of a situation that needs correction, that doesn't automatically mean that you are required to have a response. You write down 2 + 2 = 5, and your teacher says that's wrong. That the answer is wrong is just a bit of information that's been shared with you. But if you say, oh, boy, am I stupid, you made an unnecessary response and an unnecessary evaluation that will involve feelings. Mm-hmm. But if you say, oh, okay, 2 + 2 is not 5. Okay, well, let's see, what is it now? There you've treated it as a bit of information about something on a piece of paper, not as something about you. Mm-hmm. To have a knowing about the world situation, or a knowing about something impending, or whatever it might be, is a bit of information that does not require an evaluative or emotional response within you. If you recognize that, then when you have the feeling of a knowing or a sensitivity that makes you aware of something, then if you will treat it as a bit of information, you have something to be curious about, not something to engage physically in responding to. And you can say, oh, is there something specific I need to know about this relative to myself? Is there something I need to do? Do I need to sit down and pray? Whatever it is. You see, you can begin to be inquisitive about it without experiencing fear or another emotion. So being sensitive to knowing that is beyond physical means does not automatically include a call for you to respond emotionally. You see that? But it is information, and you are aware of it for a reason. And so be curious about what the reason is. Be curious about what you are to bring to the situation. You see? And that will keep you out of your gut.
Oh, I'd like that very much.
It will not put you in your mind, but it will put you in your heart.
That's where I want to be. And it manifests itself into headaches and gut feelings and heart palpitations and everything rotten you could
Indeed.
imagine.
Indeed.
And so, I just pray for a release from that. And if I can, I'll have to listen to this tape.
Yes,
It's hard to take all in, but
I understand.
yeah.
To be intuitive or to be sensitive is only a curse if you think that the knowing that comes with it is a personal responsibility or a burden for you to bear, or something for you to respond to negatively. So don't curse the sensitivity. Often sensitivity is experienced as a gift, but at the same time, one that carries penalty for you with it. And penalty is not a part of it. It's a thought that it's better for you not to think, because it's not true. The appropriate response to a knowing, even if it is unclear, is, oh, okay, what is it I need to know about this? And then listen for the answer. Don't keep focused on the knowing that you're having. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Let it be the call for inquisitiveness, but inquire of something other than the sensation of the intuition. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Do that.
Okay. Just one other thing. About the thought processes that are going on, it feels like, since I started this study, that I hold on to thoughts so tightly because I don't want them to be there, if that makes sense. I'm so aware of what I'm thinking because I want to be still inside, kind of along the lines of what she was saying earlier. So that's kind of a hard part into receiving peace. It's just being attached to those thoughts so much.
It takes practice to let go of them. One very effective way of letting go of them is to give your attention to something other than thoughts, like the sensation of the air as it passes the bridge of your nose or at your nostrils, and just pay attention to the sensation. That is a very effective way of getting past words and thoughts in your mind. Very often for a thinker, a mantra is not the most effective means of meditating, because there is an activity in the mind that is very similar to thinking.
Yeah.
So to pay attention to a sensation that is continuous, like the sensation of breathing, because you breathe continuously, is a very effective means of abandoning the mental arena where thoughts occur.
Mm-hmm.
So you might try that.
Okay. Thank you very, very much.
Don't resist thoughts. Give your attention to an arena where thoughts are not occurring, like sensation.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Hands. The gentleman right here.
Hi, Raj.
Good afternoon.
Does this mic sound okay? Yeah, it's all right. I identify very much with the two ladies who spoke of being wound up and bound up in their feelings and their anxieties. And what you said about being sensitive to things that aren't necessarily you and letting them feel like you also rang a bell with me. Where I'm going to go is into what has happened to me and Dinah as a result of this. You've spoken before about being paralyzed by fear. And I have allowed that idea to diminish me a lot over the months and the years, because I thought, well, if I'm paralyzed by fear, it's because I'm a weenie. I have no courage. And that was very demeaning to me and deepened my fear. And now I'm at a place of appreciation to the point where I want movement. And I feel movement happening.
Appreciation of what?
Of appreciation. Appreciation of feeling good. Appreciation of the things that are around me, the people in my life, the those things that that do happen to me that work well. And I find that just because I appreciate these things and want movement doesn't really seem to bring it about. It seems to require some further participation from me.
Well, you see, fear is like an anchor.
Oh, yeah.
And so it, if you're floating in the river and you have an anchor, it may drag along the bottom some, and there is some movement, but as a general rule, it's a drag. Because you're at a point of being able to value appreciation, you now have some justification for invalidating the fear and not engaging it, not employing it, not feeding into it. And that's what you need to do, is to begin to disengage it, not focus on it as much. Don't fight it. That will only aggravate it, magnify it. When you live with peace and harmony for a substantial amount of time, with no serious challenges, the experience of fear diminishes. And when you live without fear for a long time, and then something fearful, shockingly happens, that implies real potential threat, and fear raises its head, you don't have the perspective to recognize that its rearing its head does not justify great reaction. During war, that goes on for a protracted amount of time, where fearful things happen daily, people arrive at a point where they stop reacting. Sometimes it is said that one becomes numb to it. But the fact is that threat does not have to occasion overwhelming fear. Threat should occasion intelligent, clear response that reduces threat. It should not cause fear that immobilizes and depletes you. As Americans, all of you are soft. You have become soft. I do not mean by that that you should be able to deal with a lot of fear. What I mean by that is that without the occasion for fear, you haven't, for a very long time, had the occasion to recognize that threat doesn't have to occasion fear. And as a result, what has happened in the last year has thrown you into reaction which you no longer have the perspective to see which you no longer recognize that you don't have to react to. Just a moment. I'm going to put it this way. When you're toughened up, you don't waste your time reacting to what doesn't require reaction. But when you're soft, you react to everything.
We're running out of cornflakes. Seems like an emergency.
Indeed. I realize that this may not sound reasonable, but the fact is that for the last year, everyone in the United States has been overreacting. And their overreaction has been fed daily and even knowingly through the media, so as to arouse you to justify actions which are unjustifiable, but which seem totally justifiable when you are afraid. And the fear seems to be demonstrably valid. Don't let the conscious manipulation of your fear by others lead you around by the nose. Don't abandon your peace so easily. That's what I meant. When you are soft and not hardened, you abandon your peace unnecessarily. When you're hardened, you don't abandon your peace necessarily. When you're hardened, you choose for your peace even more definitely, so that you remain a constructive part of the correction of the problem that poses a threat. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
This is important. There need to be clearer heads now. Fear is not justifiable under any circumstances. It is understandable when there is threat, but it is still not justifiable. And it's your choice to abandon it. What I mean by that is it's always your choice to do something that you find to be more important than choosing for your peace. So if you don't have your peace, it is because you've found something else more important. You say, well, I've had a lot of help. Well, that's not very intelligent. You may get a lot of help, but you know what? You're the one who's going to suffer from abandoning your peace. And it's not going to help anybody else. And if you refuse to abandon your peace, you'll still have your peace, and it will help everyone else.
We have what would appear to be a big need at home. And because one doesn't want to approach the filling of this need from a place of less peace, and one wants to approach their involvement from a place of greater peace, it would seem that taking the time to be in peace detracts from that need, detracts from the capacity to fulfill need. And because one has carried anxiety and reaction around like a little buddy for his whole life, it doesn't seem like you're going to be able to get rid of it.
Fast enough.
Right. It's like if you take the time to be rid of it, that's all well and good, sitting around in your peace and not getting much done.
But the meeting of the need is long overdue.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Paul has the same problem. He has been able to enjoy having the time to become peaceful. But I'll tell everyone, times are changing. And the call for meeting needs is occurring faster than the amount of time you would like to be able to take to find your peace. And therefore, the envelope is being pushed, the boundaries of your tents are being enlarged, and you are going to have to risk the chance and dare to respond, trusting that whatever amount of peace that is necessary to contribute to the solving of the need will be there whether you've had time to let it in or not. It's a simple fact that peace is the ever-present, ongoing nature of your being. It's not something to obtain. It is something you let yourself into. But because it's not something you obtain, it's not something that takes time to get. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I have experienced it before where the situation seems to be tense and not peaceful, and that you're not serving yourself well by remaining in this posture, and then all of a sudden the peace is there.
Yes.
Ah, okay. I don't have to go sit down and breathe deeply for 15 minutes to do that.
Yes. But it takes risking the chance that becoming involved before the peace has presented itself fully, you have to risk the chance that responding quickly, you will have to risk the chance that the peace will be there if you respond quickly without the usual amount of process to it and engage the need. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, and the
And that is frightening because you don't want to make a mistake, but that's exactly the fear that you can't afford to honor.
having an object of your affection helps.
Yes, it does. And that's why engaging in meeting the need here is important and easier for you. Because you have an object of your affection means that the risk is lower, that if you engage quickly, I'm sorry. Because you have an object of your affection, the risk of not having your peace quickly is less, because love promotes and nurtures peace.
Because of well, I'll just be frank. Because I've been a horse's ass most of my life, a lot of things have not got done that needed to be done. And some of them are appearing now in ways that could seem not very nice at all. And I'm just curious if you see...
Well, first of all, are you going to plead guilty?
If I have to. What I mean is it could go easier on me if I did that. I see the double entendre in what you asked. In other words, I'm really not guilty. I haven't done anything terrible, if that's what you mean.
Like I said earlier, each of you does the best that you can do. If you could have done better, you would have done better. And if you say, well, I knew better, but I didn't do it, you didn't know better. You did what you knew best. You've got to let yourself off the hook so that you can recognize that you're not guilty, because guilt will immobilize you, and guilt will deplete you, and guilt will keep you from being able to be intelligent now. And so right now, you've got to make a choice so that the best you can do now isn't to choose for feeling guilty and be immobilized. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. It's hitting home quite forcefully.
Because there's more good available to you at the moment than what that will bring. Just a moment. So what if you goofed? So what? Are you going to take the past? Are you going to take your memory and let it govern now? Or are you going to be fresh now? Is this making sense?
Oh yeah. Yes, what you're saying is not new to me. You and I have discussed it before. I just needed some encouragement. I needed to hear it out of Paul's mouth too, I think.
From the horse's mouth to the horse's ass.
So anyway, you came to me in my sleep last night, and I just wanted to say thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
And yeah, you were actually pretty funny. I have more, but let's let somebody else have the mic if that's what you want.
We're not finished.
Well, okay, I'm not. I asked you one time about where I was going in life, and you really didn't want to answer me directly, but you said to me, if you can, go back to when you were a youngster, I think is the word you used, and see if you can get some hints there. Well, I remember sitting in school I went to Catholic school, and listening to them talk about hearing the call and how it was my responsibility to heed the call, and that the way I heed the call is by telling adults about it.
Did you ever get the call?
Oh yeah, all the time. But part of the call was not to go tell the adults about it. And I felt like, yeah, but that's, part of me felt like I really needed to respond to that, and that my calling was there, and that my calling was about you and what you wanted me to do and the love that I was feeling, and that I needed to stay with that. Well, of course, you know I didn't do that. And now I'm looking back at that, and I'm thinking, okay, whither thou goest, I will follow. And I just want to know if you have anything to say about that. Because I've worked in industry, I've worked in business, I've worked on my own, I've done all sorts of work. And I need to approach the thing new.
Do I have anything to say?
Yes, do you?
Welcome aboard. That a, quote, long time, unquote, has passed in which you refused. But it's a meaningless and insignificant amount of time.
To you. It hurt me.
That's good enough for me. To me, it is an insignificant amount of time. It is an amount of time that has no significance. That has not enough significance to justify an evaluation. You see what I mean? That you are consciously willing now is all that matters. That you weren't consciously willing was not surprising. It was understandable.
Yes, you were never angry with me about it.
No. You gave it significance that it did not have. And you burdened yourself with guilt about it that was never laid upon you. And I encourage you to let it go. And just feel my rejoicing that you are present. Don't let the past interfere with our togetherness now. Don't superimpose it upon where you are now. Because I'm not. If you don't know how to do something, and then you learn how to do it, however long you didn't know how to do it becomes irrelevant.
Sometimes it can seem pretty relevant when you haven't quite got the hang of it yet. You know that I've learned a lot of things. I've learned how to do a lot of things in my life. And I know that it really doesn't have that much to do with what's happening, but there's that feeling, that same feeling when you're learning how to do something that's relatively complex, and you've learned and learned and learned and learned and learned, and you're almost really good at it. But that little time where you're not really good at it, and it seems like you have to apply yourself fully to it as if you do know how to do it, even though you really don't. That seems not just very difficult, but that if you screw up, it's going to be a bad screw up.
Well, you were fine up until the last 3 or 4 words.
Yeah.
Because you can't lose what you have learned. And yes, at the end, it takes a commitment that seems perhaps unjustifiable. But you do it. Have faith.
I find that happening more and more.
Yes. As I told her, be patient with yourself at this point. And just persist. You got to come into the kingdom of heaven on your own 2 feet. And the last foot may seem to be the hardest. But you do it anyway. And you do it with my help.
Thank you for your help.
You're welcome. I know this is hard. I know it is hard for Paul. But you know what? No one who is conscious is providing you with anything but encouragement. While those who are unconscious will judge you. So, hang in here with us. Those of us who are standing in support of you. Okay.
Thank you
You are welcome.
for hanging in there with us.
You're welcome. We will take a break. Okay. Hands. Right here. Good
Hi,
afternoon.
Raj. My question has to do with mental and physical health. I'm told that I have a disease, a bone disease, and I've had surgeries off and on since I've been 2 years old. And as the years have gone by, the bone surgeries have gotten more entailed. And where I am right now is I can pretty well handle the physical aspects of it, and I can move around, I think, pretty well. But the mental part of it is really getting me down. I'm right now on a lot of narcotic medications. I go back and forth to 2 or 3 different narcotics that seem to be pretty powerful, and they're mind-altering in many cases. And so what I have been experiencing in the last 2 years is that just a lot of confusion, not knowing really how I even feel at times, just feeling so left out of everything, left out of not only the family and friends, the friendships that I've made in the past, and the social things that I used to do, but even left out of my own ability to make decisions for myself on what direction to move in. The narcotics seem to keep me moving backwards instead of ahead when I am trying to focus and be aware or conscious of the compassion and the love and the expression of all that is around me, and even within myself, becomes totally unrecognizable, almost at times where I feel zombie-like. And this has been going on for the last couple years.
Well, first of all, I want you to stop believing that this is inevitable.
Okay.
If you give that word, then you will not expect to see anything but that. And you will make it difficult for anything but that to appear.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to be more aggressive, mentally speaking, in the same way that you have been more aggressive, physically speaking, whether it was uncomfortable or not. You're going to need to stop acquiescing to, let us say, mental incapacity or increasing mental incapacity. I want you to start objecting to it in your mind. I want you to say in your mind, I refuse to join with this idea that I can lose my mental capacity, or that the drugs can control my ability to be clear. I want you to be somewhat vigorous. I also want you to begin to allow for the idea of the reversal of the condition. Because, of course, healing would have to be a reversal. which means you will have to let go of the idea that it is hereditary and that therefore there is a cause sometime in the past. That is a, quote, family trait, which therefore you are that you therefore must be subject to. Justification for the problem has to dissolve. There's a reason for words like regeneration and redemption. And redemption isn't just a religious word. It has to do with redeeming something to its original form. Regeneration is to be expected. And regeneration, complete regeneration, means that whatever was regenerated has been redeemed to its original state of perfection. The reason that there are words such as that is because they represent real things, not just nice ideas, not something to make yourself feel good while you're dying, to soothe you while the inevitable happens. I want you to begin to use your mind on your own behalf. I want you to be your own best friend and speak to yourself of the greatest potential in you, instead of letting your mind rehearse the prognosis.
Mm-hmm. That I've heard all my life.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you something. If all of those people who have told you this all your life had been saying 2 + 2 is 5, the fact that so many of them said it and that they said it for so long would not make it a fact. So you've got to decide whose word you're going to take. And I'll tell you something. What they're saying is not God's word. God's word is, "This is my beloved daughter, in whom I am well pleased. This is my perfect expression of myself, the perfect embodiment of all that I am." And that's what the regeneration leads to the manifestation of, which is the redemption of you. And I want you to be open to this, not with false hope, but with, I'm going to say, conscientious resolve. At least to the extent that it allows you to invalidate the word that has been set down for you by the experts. Your well-being has not managed to slip outside of God's grasp. you have not been able to slip outside of God's will for you. And I want you to be able to do more than just cope well as you go downhill.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm looking to do, is to be able to cope.
Because that's not what it's about. Now, you're very strong. And you have a lot of determination. But instead of using that determination to manage not to suffer too much as things inevitably get worse, I want you to use that determination to embrace regeneration and redemption, which is another way of saying claiming your birthright. Now, I've shared many things today that are relevant to you,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to what I'm saying right now. And you cannot walk out of here in the same frame of mind that you walked in. And I want you to consciously claim the new perspectives for yourself. With as much vigor as you exercise, physically speaking, and with the same determination that you use to exercise, even if it's difficult, even if it's uncomfortable. It doesn't matter if you are entertaining a new viewpoint vigorously in opposition to the one that's been handed down to you through the years. It doesn't matter if that seems to be work. Do it. Just like you get your exercise. I am standing on your behalf. And I invite you to join me in standing on your behalf. And again, I'm not talking about wonderful cloud nine spiritual talk to be a sedative, not a sedative, but a painkiller while the problem kills you. What I'm talking about is very grounded and very grounding. And it is for the purpose of opening up again the door to you of the reasonability of allowing for regeneration and redemption in the most practical terms that will show up on your x-rays and that no physician will be able to deny. But what I don't want you to do anymore is to find the strength to die gracefully.
seems like that's what I've been looking for, is how do I die gracefully?
Indeed.
How do I let go? Because I have been blessed with plenty in my life. I've been well taken care of
Oh,
the
yes,
majority
I
of my
know.
life, and
You've
how
had
do I
enough.
let go?
You've had enough good.
with gratitude
Uh-huh.
instead of
Well, bullshit on
asking
letting
the
go
question, why did
with
this happen to me?
gratitude. You hear me? We're not going to let go with gratitude. We're not going to gratefully die. We're going to joyously embrace life. It's your birthright to have a whole lot more good than you've already had, so that you can stand in even fuller gratitude and open to receive even more. And you know what I'm doing? I'm turning your boat around.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Let me do it. Don't resist it. Allow it to be turned around. Every thought you have, as I said earlier, sends out messengers looking for that which will confirm it, so it can bring the news of confirmation back to you. And I will not join you in sending out messengers, in entertaining thoughts which send out messengers looking for confirmation of the worst about you. I will not join you in that. And I ask you to join me in entertaining thoughts that send out messengers that look for confirmation of the best in you, because they will come back with those confirmations. They will not come back and say, I'm sorry, I couldn't find any confirmation. Now, it may be a little strenuous and it may be a little shocking to be confronted with this. But by God, it's better to be shocked to life than gracefully die.
Yeah. That seems to be my struggle the last couple of years on the narcotics, the switching and everything, and the mental aspects that entails, is not being able to.
There may come a point here where you'll have to put your foot down and refuse, and tell your doctors that you refuse to have as much of the medication, because you need your mind to be a little clearer than it is.
Yeah. Yeah, the option is the bar, to try a bar in the spine, and I am so not wanting to do that.
Well, that's the best option they can give you at the moment, but turn your boat around and you'll find you'll have other options.
Okay. I'm willing to
Okay.
do that. If there are other options in that one, yeah.
I said, you think differently, you will send out messengers to bring back confirmation of that which blesses you, redeems you. That's got to mean other options. It's got to mean options beyond anything that the physicians can come up with, because they can't come up with regeneration and redemption. So I want you to be open all the way. You are beginning to see that you were adopting a self-defeating attitude in the name of graciousness, in the name of some sort of grace. But it still was self-defeating. You do not want to set into motion a self-defeating prophecy.
So the other part of that is, as I change and see myself in a different way or a different light, then others will respond to that, instead of, because what I'm getting now is well, I do the best I can to just play it off and not let others know, because usually when they do know, then it's a whole nother response. But so I
Yes.
guess I do, you know, I stay inside, I stay in my four walls, my box, and
As you change, you will see others responding differently. You said, as I begin to look at myself in a new way. Remember that all you have in your mind is memory. So looking at yourself in a new way isn't available to you in your present mindset. So I am encouraging you to ask for help in a new vision. And you will be lovingly supplied with the attitude and the feeling and the ideas that will constitute a new way of looking at yourself. And not only will it be ideas, but it will be a feeling, a conviction, a knowing, so that you're able to look at yourself and say, hey, I'm not going off on a spiritual flight of fantasy here. I'm not becoming insane in my head because I'm experiencing a deep knowing. And the only kind of place that experience could come from has to be divine. There's no way I could manufacture this, even if I was insane. You see?
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You are welcome. I mean every word I have said.
I know.
And it's exactly what you needed to hear. And your boat is headed in a new direction right now. Don't turn around.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, in the back there, in the maroon top.
I wanted to ask permission for something that just now came to me on her behalf. I was out of the room to know what transpired in the beginning or any details, but it's come to me to ask if it's appropriate to to share in a declaration on her behalf what I know as the truth that has never been other than that about the body. Like a prayer.
It is wonderful to have someone witness for her on her behalf, by all means.
Well, I've never done this before, but the idea came. As a wish for you, my guide has said that every thought is a prayer. And my wish to see for you is the fact that your body is your friend. And all that there is right there with you is your will, joined with God's will. Your will be done. And that's all there is. And your body will absolutely accompany you. That all there ever was to this illusion was a thought. And this thought is not something you ever wanted, that was ever part of you, that you ever wanted to entertain. And I wish to see for you only your will, which is God's will, be expressed. And your body will follow. There is nothing else for the presence of the spirit of your body right now to do otherwise than to agree with your will, which is God's will. So there is no enemy, and there is nothing else out there to heal, only to express and desire what you will. And I know, and I stand with you, that your will is God's will, and that word be done for you right now. And I ask those adamantine particles that constitute your body right now with love to manifest the love that you are.
Amen. And with that blessing, which I know has touched everyone, we will call it a day. Thank you.
Can we say a special thanks to Susan?
Pardon?
I'd like to say a special thanks to Susan.
The microphone's right. Oh, the microphone?
I just want to say a special thanks to Susan because it was beautiful. Yes, that was beautiful.
Would you say it in the microphone?
Oh, it was a special thanks to Susan because it was such a beautiful idea and such a beautiful thing we needed to have to end this program. And it brought all of our hearts together to help with to know that the healing is done.